this is Chris Robertson, and I'm from the future, and you're listening to The Chronic Rift.
Nothing lights up the new television season as well as TV Guide's fall preview issue. On sale now, everywhere.
Welcome back, everyone, to an all-new episode of the Chronic Rift podcast. It's your old pal, John S. Drew here, and it is, what is the date? August 27th, 2016, 7 a.m. in the morning. Welcome to all of you on YouTube listening to us live. Remember, folks, every Saturday morning we're doing this live. It's sort of a, I wouldn't say cost-cutting measure, I'd say more like a time-saving measure in doing it live and also having that dynamic as well. And joining me once again for this live edition of the Chronic Rift from the Weekly Podioplex, Mr. Michael Falkner. Hey, Michael.
Hey, John. How are things going this morning?
Doing well. Now, I'm guessing maybe Chrissy Myers forgot again that it was 7 a.m. Because at the end of last week's episode, we're finished up, the music had played out, and all of a sudden Chrissy pops on and she's like, I'm here. We're like, yeah, we're done. So I know she checked in last night because I saw on our messaging that she had seen everything that we were a go for today. So it's possible she may pop in at some point during this show. So we're certainly looking forward to that. And Keith DeCandido, who, you know, has been with this show since the very beginning. I mean, literally, when we did a pilot episode outside his house in his backyard porch just to see what like it would look like using just, you know, camcorders. Keith has been there since the very beginning. He will be along joining us. He's been dealing with issues as he moves from house to house. So hopefully next weekend, especially the Labor Day weekend, it'll be Keith and I, because Michael, you and Chrissy aren't going to be around. You're going to be pretty busy next weekend.
Yeah, next weekend is a con weekend for both of us. I think Chrissy will be up in Toronto, and I'll be here in Atlanta at DragonCon.
Right. Now, it's funny. I was just, before we went on, I was watching some TV, and there was a commercial for, I think it's an FX series, I couldn't tell, called Atlanta by Donald Glover. Have you seen anything about this?
I think I've just seen the preview or the trailer for it, and I recognized a couple of the locations in the trailer. I'm not sure if the trailer really is something I'm going to, if it speaks to me as a series I want to check out or not, but I know that there have been a lot of people filming around here because, as they're saying, Atlanta's becoming the new Hollywood. There's a lot of good tax breaks. There's a lot of the studios like Pinewood moving into the area. There's just filming everywhere. So it's become a good place to go for film in the film industry overall, you know, especially with the money they can save.
Well, the money they can save, and then I'm also thinking, except for the odd occasion, you don't get a lot of snow down there, so I would imagine the winters aren't as brutal as they would be here up north.
Yeah, and that really comes into play with something like Stranger Things. Like that was all filmed in Atlanta, and it was cold. You could tell by the way that, you know, when they're breathing and stuff, you can see the fog on their breath. So it does get cold, but it doesn't really snow that often. And since that show was set in the wintertime of, I guess, up in Indiana, they could, you know, film here and still kind of get that same feeling of it's wintertime, but it's not quite snowy. It's not quite cold enough to snow. Right.
Yeah. Speaking of which, bringing it to the table, that's what I wanted to bring was Stranger Things. You've seen it, right, Michael? Yeah. Have you seen the whole series?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Now, here's something. When you watched it, did you do an episode here, an episode there? Did you do chunks, or did you just mainline the whole thing?
We did it in 1 or 2 episode chunks. My wife is currently studying for the CPA exams, so she would, you know, be studying for a good long time. Then, okay, I need a break, and we've been picking series to watch in those break times, and Stranger Things rolled around as one we were going to pick up, and we'd watch about an hour, maybe two, depending on how long of a break she needed. So it was probably over the span of about a week, since it's 8 episodes. Maybe one here, two there. It was really hard because they end up being cliffhangers,
Yep.
from chapter to chapter. So it was really hard to put the remote down and walk away, and then, okay, we'll come back to this.
Yeah, we did it in about 2 weeks, but it was funny because we did the first episode, and then it was about a week's time, and then we did the second. And after the second, my wife and I looked at each other, and she said, one more. Okay, so then we did 3. And then it was kind of like every night after that, it was either an episode or 2, or in the case of the last night, we watched the final 3. Normally, we don't do that with any television show. I still got Orphan Black, the 4th season, sitting on my DVR to watch, but for some reason we were so hooked into the show that we couldn't stop talking about it. We, and would like look forward to the evening and like just being home, whether, for her from work and such, and settling down and watching it. And for the most part, my kids, my 15-year-old and my 10-year-old, they also sat through most of it. Being teens, I think sometimes they're like, oh, it's just not cool watching TV with the parents anymore. But
yeah, it was one of those shows that my wife's not big on the horror genre overall. I mean, she'll watch The Walking Dead because for some reason that one attracts her.
Okay.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I enjoy The Walking Dead. It just surprised me when she's like, I want to watch the zombie show. I'm like, okay. But this one, it's got certain horror elements to it, and it was surprising that it also grabbed her and dragged her in. We spent probably the first episode or 2 just immersed in how accurate the 80s was on that show. I mean, that was the era we grew up in.
Right.
And so we're like, oh my God, the hair and the clothes. Where did they find those pants? It was fun to really kind of relive our childhoods in a way with that. And then as soon as the series really kicked into gear and we started getting in with the plot, I was like, okay, yeah, now we can set aside the nostalgia and really dig into the meat of what this thing is. And it was really good.
Yeah, we were the same way. We found ourselves pointing out things that, this scene or this element reminds us of this movie and such. And for the most part, I loved the music choices. I was a little disappointed that there were 1 or 2 where they did covers of an 80s song rather than actually getting the original. But overall, it was, let's put it this way. When it was over, my wife said, I can't believe we have to wait an entire year for more.
Yeah, and my wife was about the same. She was, I mean, the spoiler here is there isn't really that much of a super happy ending to it. I mean,
no.
It's definitely in the theme of Stephen King kind of meets the X-Files. But when my wife was looking at it, she's like, oh, okay, well, this is gonna turn out well for all the characters. And then the last 10 minutes of the final episode, she's like, I don't like this ending. Because she's a big fan of happy endings. And I'm like, yep. Well, they're setting up for a second season. They're what? Yep. And you have to wait about a year. Oh, come on.
Yeah. What I found funny was the other day on the Facebook page, the not for Stranger Things, but for Funko, they were showing prototypes of the Stranger Things characters, including, and then this surprised me, but she kind of did stand out, even though she didn't last the whole series. Spoilers, I'm sorry. Barbara.
Yeah. She's become a bit of a fan favorite. I mean, there are people who are saying, there needs to be justice for Barb, and a few writers have been like, that was kind of the point of the whole thing overall. But even the writers of the show were like, yeah, for the second season, we're going to do something to try to, she may or may not be back as a character. We won't dive too much into that one. But we're going to do something to kind of wrap up her story, because it just kind of leaves hers hanging a bit, her fate in there and how it applies to the real world aside from the upside down world. They're really going to try to wrap that up and put a bow on it.
Well, it's funny because if you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Like you said, this is the 80s. I mean, we would have missing children cases that went unsolved. I mean, recently we had the Aton Pates case sort of reopened, but that's because we're applying 2016 technology to something that happened in the 80s. And that's a little hard also, I guess, for especially younger modern viewers to grasp, is that, especially I love the whole thing with Winona Ryder and the telephone.
A ringing rotary telephone.
A rotary, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and just her attempts to communicate with her son using the telephone and getting the different types and finally laying out for the the cordless one or the close to cordless with the answering machine, and it just But I have to say, and everybody I've spoken to, they pretty much all agree, best character in the whole thing, Dustin.
Absolutely. Oh, he was phenomenal. I mean, he had a really strong supporting role until the point where, and I don't, I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this so we don't spoil it. There is a point where our protagonists kind of have their rift. It's in the typical narrative structure. They have their rift. They're going to go their separate ways for a little bit, and he's the one that kind of glues them back together again. And the point where he's looking at his one friend who's like, that guy was an idiot. And he's like, absolutely, yes, he was. But you were too. What?
Yeah.
Basically you swung first, you drew first blood. You have to apologize. You have to heal the rift, or this friendship's not going to last. And when he started moving into that power position, as the mediator, as the spirit of that group, I was just like, this kid's going somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because all along you get the impression that, and I can't think of his name at the moment, he's the leader type. And there are moments where he differs a little naturally because he's a kid and he's afraid of stepping up too much, and he also wants to be liked, and he's, because he wants to get along, as you say, with the other protagonists, and they get into it. And Dustin has to step up, and you're like looking at him going, you know what? He's going to be somebody someday.
Yeah.
Like, that's how well defined the characters are on this show, is that you see yourself wondering what Dustin's going to be like in 10 years, where he's going to go and stuff.
He reminds me narratively of like a McCoy to Captain Kirk. Where the captain is the strong leader, that he does go out there and do stuff, but there comes a point where he's going to falter, and he's going to say, maybe this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Like confidence is lost. I think I may have taken a wrong turn. And Dustin comes in like McCoy would in the original Star Trek and says, no, Jim, it's okay. You need to settle and do this now. He's kind of the heart of the group.
Yeah, there you go. He's definitely the heart. And then I guess that makes 11 the Spock.
Probably.
Or the Ilea, depending if you got the shaved head. I mean, she was great too.
Oh, yeah. She was phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And listening to some interviews and stuff, there was a podcast that interviewed the I don't remember the name of the character now, but it was the character who was running around with all the kind of rebel kids that spray painting the wall at that one point. The mean kids,
right?
And she says that they all fell in love with the actress who played 11. When she arrived on the set, she was this really quiet, she's from England, so it's really quiet British girl who just didn't know what she was supposed to be doing. And as soon as the director kind of sat down with her and said, okay, we need you to do this, like there's some elements of telekinesis in there, kind of think like Carrie or Firestarter in a way. And he kind of gave her the cues of, you just need to twitch your hand a little bit and this thing will happen. And it apparently helped this actress to realize how much power she could emote in just the twitch of a finger. And as soon as the interviewee was saying, as soon as that sit down happened, you could just see the light switch pop on. They flipped it, and she was in character, ready to go. And it was almost like Eleven was real and on the set. She was that good.
Well, like you mentioned, she's got telekinetic abilities and such. Every time she would do just the little crick of her neck when she was activating, and it was so subtle, but the moment you did it, you kind of like cringed, because it's like you knew she didn't have total control over what she was doing. So you're like, uh-oh, what's going to happen now? And sure enough, there were some accidents. Just an overall, God. And something else I totally missed until I went to the IMDb page was that the guy who's heading up the whole thing at the research center, Matthew Modine, didn't recognize him.
It took me a while too, and I'm like, where's Matthew Modine in this? I've seen him in the credits. Oh my.
Yeah.
I looked at my wife at one point and I'm like, we are old. And she says, why is this? And I'm like, because the mother, she was Spock's mom. And you remember back in Beetlejuice, right? She's old enough to play the mother roles now. We're like, yeah, we're getting there.
Well, you got to admit, it was a nice touch, too, having two recognizable faces from the 80s, playing adult. I mean, because they could have gone with more relative unknowns for those roles as well.
They could have, yeah. And I think they went to that link back to the 80s of, these actors, you've seen them in countless roles. This is a good way to draw in that audience who recognize these kind of almost child, or younger actors, and bring them in to say, here they are now, and they're doing fine.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was Atlanta, but what was the city they were really supposed to be in, or the town, or whatever?
It's somewhere up in Indiana. I forget the exact city name.
Right. And, you mentioned at the start, there's been a lot of, shooting going on in Atlanta and such. Have you ever been, near a set that was shooting?
I haven't. My wife has. She was down at Georgia State University doing her studies, and there's a point where she's walking down the road, and there's a guard standing right in the middle of this blocked off road, and she's got to find a way around, and she's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And this, it's obviously not a police officer. It's just a guy in the uniform who belongs to the crew who's running security. Like, oh, they're filming here. You can't come through here. And then there was a time where they were standing around, looking for people who met a certain profile as they're walking down the street to walk down the street in the actual shot. And, she was walking with one of her professors at the time, and they're like, we need you. And the professor's like, I'd love to, but I'm on my way to administer a test. I've got another friend of mine who actually, because they do a lot of casting calls around here for extras, just because there's a huge pool of people to pull from. It's a very diverse area. And she was actually pulled for The Fifth Wave, which filmed here in Atlanta. They put out a casting call for, people of Chinese descent, and she happens to be, first generation Chinese American in her family. And, she was actually one of the people running up the stairwell in one of those scenes when the floods are coming in. And so as we're watching that one, I'm like, okay, slow motion through, there she is. But yeah, it's been like Marvel Studios and everybody else, they put out a lot of casting calls for, certain profiles they're looking for, and Atlanta residents are really stepping up.
I this summer I got a chance. I mean, I wasn't involved in it, but I was in the vicinity because I was teaching at my school over the summer, and they used it, as they have in the past, for an episode of Madam Secretary for the fall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, her son, Tia Leone, the, Madam Secretary, she has a son who goes to this fictional school, and they've used our school for the location. First time around, they were doing it because the son was acting up, having trouble adjusting, I guess, to the whole situation. I don't know what. I don't watch the show, but this time they were doing an episode involving an active shooter in the school. So it was kind of funny because we had to assure the kids who, while they saw all the movie equipment and, the setups and everything, they also saw a lot of extras dressed in SWAT and police uniforms, and we had to assure them that everything was all right.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have thought about putting my name into the casting call group, but my job is just one that will not, I have to actually take off time from work, and it would actually cost me a bit more to go sit around on the movie set and hopefully be picked up as an extra than it would be to actually go to work that day. So it's not something I can do.
Right.
But I do know like a few novelists who live around here that I associate with Dragon Con. They've been in a plenty of the like the USA shows and whatever. You see them on a plane, and then you see them at the airport. You see them, waiting for a taxi. In these shows, they're like, "Hey, there's that guy."
It's funny, too, because when they were there that summer, I was told, had I been dressed more appropriately, I could have been an extra. Because I was wearing shorts and a T-shirt because the building has almost next to no air conditioning. In fact, it was funny because they took over half the cafeteria, and we actually had to move our lunch to another large room for the kids, and they had the half of it, and they were piping in their own air conditioning. They had this huge pipe, and it went, from the doors nearby, the outside doors, and it snaked all into the cafeteria, and when you walked in, it was very comfortable. Yeah. Well, when you consider you got Tim Daly, Tia Leone, oh God, I can't remember who it was that was directing it, but it was also, an 80s movie star. Eric Stoltz was directing the episode, and Morgan Freeman was there because he was directing the following episode, and he wanted to get a feel for the beats of that episode so that he could continue the flow.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd put in air conditioning too.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, let's face it. You got Morgan Freeman. The guy played God.
Yeah. You take care of God.
That's right.
And yet he's also... No, wait a minute. Was that a joke? That whole thing with everybody poops.
Was
that a joke?
I know the book exists, but...
Well, no, I know the book exists, but there was an audio. If you go to YouTube, you can actually... I don't know if it's a goof, though. Somebody doing Morgan Freeman's voice reading Everybody Poops.
Yeah, I might have been a spoof.
Yeah.
You never know these days. I mean, Sam Jackson did the one pseudo children's book, Please Go the F to Sleep.
Yes. Actually, Morgan Freeman was on... I'd say it's about 6 months ago. He was on, I want to say Jimmy Fallon, but it wasn't Jimmy Fallon. It was the other Jimmy, and I can't think of his last name now, on ABC. And he was just narrating what he saw on the street. People walking by, they had a live camera, and it was pretty funny.
He's got the voice for it. If anybody ever narrated my life story, I'd want it to be Morgan Freeman. Right.
Now... one thing I just also, since we're talking about Stranger Things and Netflix, I said it after the 8 episodes. If you're not watching this, why? The only excuse you could have for not watching this is that you don't have Netflix. And even then, I'd say, you know what? What is it like now? $10 a month? Plunk the money down for the 1 month. That's the best $10 you've spent in a while. And sit down and just watch all 8 episodes. This is such a fantastic series. And on the one hand, I understand what my wife was saying about the whole we gotta wait a year. But on the other hand, this goes to show what I've been saying about television. we don't need 22 episodes of a series. I think the networks really need to learn this, is to, instead have staggered seasons of, like, say in the fall, we'll run 13 episodes of our show, and then we'll have a spring premiere of new shows, and we'll have a summer premiere of new shows. Because honestly, if Stranger Things had been a 22 episode series, it wouldn't have been as good. It just wouldn't have been as good. We need more shows like this where you're like, oh my God, I can't wait. It's the old expression, always leave them wanting more. And, the days of 22, 24, God, back in the 60s where they were doing 30 to 36 hour-long episodes a year, it's just not the same anymore. That's why I got to give credit to, channels like FX, HBO, and such. Now people are complaining that Game of Thrones, when it comes back, might not be the whole 10 episodes. They might be a little less. But in watching Game of Thrones, I can see why less is more.
Yeah, we live in a faster paced society now than we did back in the 60s and that time frame when that 20 to 30 episode model was really popular, and it makes sense. I mean, from the Netflix perspective, you've got just Stranger Things, you've got Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all the rest of the exclusive Marvel stuff they're putting on Netflix. Those are really short, like 10 to 13 episode season sets that just they get in, they tell a story, they get out.
Right.
The Walking Dead kind of did the same thing. You talk about Game of Thrones. I think it's a good model. I don't know if networks will actually pick it up though, because they almost rely on it, sadly. I say sadly because you're right. There's a lot of, I think of like Supernatural and Stargate, where they have bits and pieces of the plot moving in certain episodes, and then they have to fill the rest of it. They have to backfill it because there's just not enough plot in that story to expand over 20, 30 episodes.
Well, that's the other thing too. When it was 20, 30 episodes, it was episodic. Your stories ended. Maybe you might pick up a plot and do a sequel, later that season or the next year. I mean, I think about like $6 Million Man and how you could have 24 episodes for a year because Steve would go in, do his mission, get out, move on, and there were hardly ever repercussions. The biggest one was at the end of the 2-part Bionic Woman, where Jamie dies. The next week, he's flirting with a stewardess on an Irish airline. It's that's different. Now, we live with these story arcs. And like you say, 22 episodes, you got to fill in those gaps because really the story itself only warrants 8, 10, 13 episodes. So we got to do this one. We got to do that one. I'm a little concerned because, and we'll talk about this in the next hour because we're going to be doing a fall TV preview. But I'm concerned because I'm hearing about a musical for The Flash and Supergirl.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that one just because I don't want him to be jumping the shark. But I'm also wondering with some of the baddies that exist in the super, mythos. Like, is it Mr. Mitzel coming in and, screwing with people and, and the Flash just happens to cross over or, something along those lines. And I'm kind of doing the wait and see just because of how they proved themselves to me in their first outings.
Right.
Like the Flash has been phenomenal and Supergirl, I just fell in love with that show and now it's on the CW. So they're all right there.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll talk about more about it in the 8 o'clock hour. One last thing, speaking of Netflix, and this is just a heads up for everybody, that Zootopia is coming to Netflix in September. So if you've not seen that, there's another reason to just get Netflix for the month. My oldest loves that movie to pieces, has seen it 3 or 4 times in the theater. And just recently bought the DVD. And it's just sort of, I don't know, how would you put it? has taken it as a... What's the words I'm looking for? It's sort of life goals, so to speak. Because the movie itself is more than just simply a cute animated movie about animals.
Yeah, it's really the story of this young person who, I say person kind of generically, but this young individual who is told she can't do something because of her physical stature, because it's just not done, and she proves that she can do it. She overcomes all the odds and becomes something that she thought that she dreams of doing, of her goals that everyone else said was impossible.
Right.
I agree with you. It's a very good movie. It's a really good Disney movie to begin with, but then it's got a catchy soundtrack to it that really keeps you moving. It's got really good animation. It's got great vocal talent behind it. Yeah, I heartily recommend that movie. I loved it.
Yeah. So, okay. This time around, Mike, you said you had nothing to bring.
No, I have nothing else to add to the table this week.
Okay, so why don't we take a quick break, and when we come back, we've got 2 reviews to go over. Well, definitely 1, maybe 2. We'll see how the time goes here. So we'll take this quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue.
How to continue a television series after a major actor has left the cast. Part 1.
The Quatermass Method.
Simply recast a new actor in the original role. Hope that no one notices that a familiar character now looks completely different. This was also famously used in the James Bond films.
For more about British science fiction television, listen to the British Invaders podcast at www.britishinvaders.com.
The Flash Pulp Podcast. 3 to 10 minutes of fiction brought to you thrice weekly. Now it's 3 apocalypses in one. Yeah! Suffering from tough, stuck-on humans? Well, 20 hellish hours of suffocation in the all-encompassing web of Karwik the Spider God will get them right out. Too many brains lying around? The ravenous mouths surrounding zombie-fighting Ruby will quickly clean those up. Nosy neighbors? Infect them with the murder plague, and watch as they dissolve into paranoid maniacs bent on the preemptive assassination of their friends and family. Why stop at one end of the world when you can have all 3? You can find them all at flashpulp.com or search for them on iTunes.
And we're back with the review segments. We've got 2 this time around. I'm going to get things started. I'm going to keep it short and sweet and recommend a podcast to you all. Sure, many of you are aware of it if you listen to podcasts regularly. It's called Flip the Table. This is I'd say every 2 weeks it comes out, usually on a Friday, but it's like over the weekend. It's a group of 4. Moderator Chris, Flip Flory, Dr. Laser Books, and Jared Hunnefeld. And basically what these guys do is they get together, they play a board game, and they review it. What I like about this one, though, is that they don't actually play the game on air, which can sometimes be a little bit boring. What they do is they play ahead of time, and then they review it. But the review is fun. They get into the game mechanics, pieces that are offered, offering alternative ways you could play the game to make it more interesting if it's not an interesting game. And every game is fair. It's not just going for something that they particularly like. That's the real key thing, because that's tough. You know, I know if I had something like that, it would be hard for me to sit down and maybe play the Hello Kitty game or something like that. They do it. They go and they take the bullet and they'll play the game. And then sometimes it's funny because some of these games that you'd think, oh my God, there's no way we would ever play something like that or that they would be interested, they'll turn around and say, you know what? This is pretty good. And there's also a second segment, which is also part of the fun. After the review, then they play a game they make up. Sometimes it's based on, let's say, they're doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So they'll play a game where they've got eBay prices for Buffy the Vampire memorabilia. And basically they make bids on what the price they think it should be, and then whoever comes close wins points, and it's just a lot of fun. I picked up the podcast ages ago just to listen to an episode they did on the $6 Million Man board game, naturally, and I got hooked with that. I went back and I listened to select episodes based on games that would interest me. I had so much fun. I went back and listened to the whole catalog, and I've been listening ever since. And again, even if the game doesn't interest me, I'm still in for watching it or listening to it. Whereas a lot of times other podcasts, if I'm not interested in a particular content, like for instance, I'm listening now to, just started, Frank oh my God, why can't I think of his name? Trace Ballou and Frank Conniff are doing a podcast doing movie reviews where they're it's like Movies with the Mods or something like that. I think it's called. I forget. It's only a couple of episodes in, but it's fun. But I don't listen to all the episodes because I haven't watched all the movies they're doing yet, so I don't really want to deal with spoilers. This one, it doesn't matter. Whatever the game is, I'm in. The latest episode, they're reviewing a Lord of the Rings game. So, I mean, that's a little more up my alley. But it's definitely a fun podcast. Take a listen to it. Flip the Table. You'll find it on iTunes, Stitcher, or you can head on over to tableflipsyou.com. And get involved, too, because they also have, like, audience participation questions and stuff with their important question of the day. It's a fun podcast, so I highly recommend it. Now, Mike, do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do, yeah. There's quite a large rotation that I move through on my iPod, because that's something I can do at work. You know, I do work a desk job, and it is feeding into one ear while I'm working on stuff and kind of keeps the day rolling as I'm looking at stuff.
But would you, like, here's the thing. Like I said, I went to it just to listen to their discussion on $6 Million Man. I am not a huge board game player. I am a huge TV home show version player, collector, but not board games itself, although this podcast has opened my eyes to a number of them that I've actually picked up now because of listening to them talking about, including the Buffy the Vampire Slayer board game. Now, do you ever find yourself where you're drawn to a podcast because maybe you like the guest or maybe that particular topic and you figure I'll listen to that and then you get hooked in?
I have done that before. The big example is Cyborgs, which is here on our network.
Right.
I haven't seen a single episode of $6 Million Man or Bionic Woman. I know what's wrong with me. But the chemistry that you have, you and Paul share on that show is really what drove me, because it was the passion behind the show that really, you could feel the fun in there. You could feel all that happening in there. Another one is kind of like is Flash Pulp, which we ran the promo for. I'm woefully behind on the actual series of stories, but I tune into that feed. I grab that feed for their actual Flashcast episodes where it's JRD and his family sitting down and talking about their lives and how they're running the story side of things and all their influences and creative impulses. And that's what brings me to that feed. As I get time, I go back and listen to the stories, but mostly I'm there for that discussion because of just of how the chemistry works, how much fun they have doing it.
Okay. Yeah, it's just strange how podcasting in general works. I said it last week that a good podcast fills a need. And sometimes when you see the overabundance of podcasts on this particular topic, you have to scratch your head and wonder. And then at the same time, it's like, well, like the Doctor Who podcasts, okay? This one is for the women and it focuses on women-centric topics. This one's looking back at the classic series, or this one is just about interviews or something. I mean, some of these I'm making up off the top of my head, but it's just strange because I would never think that if you had told me that I would be listening regularly to a podcast about board game reviews. Now, mind you, I did one also a long time ago. I continue to listen to it. Is Game Night Guys. The two of them are playing the game. And again, like I said, that could be really boring. But what makes it entertaining is the fact that they talk about themselves, they talk about their lives as they're playing the game, and then they give their final review at the end. So that's fun. And again, just like Flip the Table, I've sort of gotten turned on to certain board games thanks to the two of them and what they do on their podcast. I try to be, when I start a podcast or listen to it, try to be as open-minded as possible. There are certain things that as soon as I hear the sound, I have to turn it off. And I know that's sad. It kind of reminds me of the first time I was grading New York State Regents, and I gave the kid a low score. And my supervisor, she picked it up and she read it. And she handed it back to me. She goes, "Why'd you give this a low score? It's brilliant." I said, "Oh, I couldn't read it." I said the handwriting was too illegible. She goes, "You can't do that. You have to read it. You have to try and decipher his handwriting. Because if you actually made the effort, you'd find he actually wrote a good essay. He can't help it that he's got horrible handwriting. We don't teach it anymore." And I'm still that way with podcasts. If the sound bothers me, the content could be great, but I still sometimes get like I'm turned off. God help me.
There was one I was trying to listen to. My wife's a big Gilmore Girls fan. I came to the series late, but I sat down with her because she enjoyed it, and I fell in love with all 7 seasons. I was trying to listen to a podcast about it, and they even mentioned, like on their Facebook page and Twitter and everything else, we got better. I listened to the first episode. I could not bring myself to go back. It was just rambly. There was a little bit of some sexism built into it. I was just like, I can't do that. I can't jump into it. So yeah, I feel you on that one. That just the even thought of going back to that one right now, just kind of no. I there's other things I could be doing right now. Even though they promised they got better. I mean, I just.
And it's funny too because now Gilmore Girls is coming back. Is that Netflix as well?
Yes, Netflix exclusive.
Wow, so funny.
Only 4 episodes. They're going to do like I guess they're 90 minutes, I want to say, but they're doing kind of a mini series thing of the seasons, like spring, summer, winter, fall.
So they'll release one at a time.
Yeah, I think they're going to release one at a time.
Interesting.
It's on Black Friday, so they know they've got a captive audience on that one.
Oh, so the first one's Black Friday.
Yeah, they're going to release it right after Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving. So they know that their families who grew up with that, or that was kind of their bonding thing, was that show, and so they're capturing everybody with the new premiere on the day after a major family holiday when people have traveled. I even looked at my wife. I'm like, we're gonna be up north somewhere for Thanksgiving this year, right? She goes, yeah, but I'm pretty sure my brother will watch it with us, just because if we give him the recommendation, he'll be on board.
Now that's interesting, because that, Netflix usually like just shoots it all out. I mean, Stranger Things, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and then I think of like Hulu that for whatever reason, they're into this whole, we're like a TV network. We've got the Mindy Project. We release episodes every Tuesday. And, this one, I don't know. It's an interesting thing because I guess, like you said, in this day and age, it's better that maybe they just have them all done. Mind you, these are 90-minute movie types almost like, so unless you're going to wait until you go through all 4 movies made to release them all, it would be too much anyway.
Yeah, I may be wrong. I think it's one at a time. Netflix has been experimenting with that a little bit, and they do shoot out some, really quickly, and then there's some, I think they're trying to bring people in and really, I guess, draw them out a bit more, not to the extent that our television seasons do now, where it's, one per week and then, it sweeps, never mind. But they are kind of experimenting with it. It looks like maybe at least the first 2 episodes of the 4-season arc will be out on November 25th. So they may be pushing the later 2. So these ones are winter and spring. So they may be pushing the other ones out maybe a month or 2 closer into the actual summer and fall time frame. So they may be kind of mixing the formulas a little bit and doing a sort of delayed release.
Okay. All right. So, all right, let's bring in Dan Persons. May I just say really quick, I love Dan Persons. I'm stating this here, my love, my undying love. I have known Dan for, it's over 20 years, 25, 26 years now. He started with the show on the public access show as someone who just wrote in as a fan. And he'd written a couple of letters, 1 or 2, 3, forget. And I said, hey, why don't you come down to the studio and hang out with us? And he showed up one day, and next thing you know, he's up on the screen doing movie reviews for us. And I've known him ever since. And when I started the podcast, I was like, dude, you want to do movie reviews for us again? He's like, sure. And even with the gaps, I mean, we took the break, and I kind of put out the call to our old reviewers, and Dan was the only one who's gotten back to me and said, okay, I'm in again. I got to say, I love this man, and he delivers every time. He's doing these movie reviews for Hour of the Wolf, which in a way is kind of my inspiration for this version of the Chronic Rift now, doing it live on a Saturday morning. Hour of the Wolf used to be on Saturday mornings here in New York on WBAI, but they got shifted to late Thursday nights or something like that. It's not the same. I mean, I always loved getting up early on a Saturday morning and listening to Jim Freund talking with science fiction types, and I kind of miss that. So I'm hoping we're filling in a gap and that maybe some people are listening to us here on Saturday morning live. But anyway, let's bring in Dan, and he's doing a review this time of Kubo and the 2 Strings.
I'm Dan Persons, movie reviewer for Hour of the Wolf. Is it fair for a critic to retcon his experience of a film after he's seen the film? I ask because I'm having a kind of a crisis of conscience with Kubo and the 2 Strings. Not that I didn't like the film. In fact, I love the film. It's a great animated film. It's probably the best animated film this year. It may well be the best film this year. It's a gorgeously mounted stop-motion adventure of a young boy living in a medieval fantasy Japan who goes on a mystical journey to find his missing father's armor, the only way that he can protect himself from his grandfather, the Moon King, who wishes to steal Kubo's one remaining eye. Practically everything in the film captivates, from the way Kubo uses his shamisen, a 3-stringed musical instrument, to coax life into origami figures, to the tender interaction between Kubo and his mother, who was traumatized into a semi-comatose state after rescuing her son from his grandfather, to the eerie manifestation of his aunts, who serve as the deadly minions of the Moon King, to the humor and depth of emotion between Kubo and his two traveling companions, the stern, sardonic monkey, voiced by Charlize Theron, and the addled but stalwart beetle, a cursed ninja voiced by Matthew McConaughey. And I respect director Travis Knight's willingness to incorporate a genuine sense of loss into the drama and not chicken out by cheating it back later on. This is the fourth film out of Oregon stop-motion studio Laika, who did Coraline and Paranorman, among others, and it may well be their best. But there was a problem I had, and I don't think it was a small problem. It came during the third act, when there are revelations about who Monkey and Beetle actually are, and how they impact Kubo and his adventures. And something didn't sit right about those revelations for me, about the way they were unveiled, and how the film handled the events subsequent. And this is again a time when I wish I could say to you, stop here and come back to this review after you've seen the film. But I don't think my host would appreciate that, so I'll have to settle for vagueness in my descriptions here. The upshot is that I was conflicted through the film's third act, still loving it, but concerned about a rather prominent, for me, flaw in the narrative. And it was after leaving the film on the subway heading back home that I had a thought. One of the running themes of Kubo and the Two Strings is that Kubo makes his living as a storyteller at his village's market, but a storyteller who can never finish his tales. He uses his shamisen to coax origami figures representing his father and various monsters into battle, but always bolts from the tale and the disappointed audience with a cursory "to be continued." Kubo and the Two Strings is supposed to be about a boy finally writing the end to a story, his own story. When I was watching the film, my presumption was that it all took place in one reality, from beginning to end. But what if that wasn't the case? What if Kubo and his adventures with Monkey and Beetle took place in another, more mythic and fantastic reality, a storyteller's reality? There are visual cues in the film that might be suggestions of Kubo entering and leaving this reality, and looking at it that way, the third act revelations, functioning as elements of a storyteller weaving his tale before a rapt audience, work, at least for me. So I wasn't sure what to do here. It didn't seem fair just to ignore my experience in the watching of the film, and my after-the-fact reconciliation is admittedly a bit of a stretch, me working to clear away a prominent kink in a film I otherwise dearly love. And so I'm giving you both, and you can watch the film one way, and if that doesn't work for you, maybe you can try the other. Or come up with your own explanation. It's a free country. Because, at base, however you make your seeing of Kubo and the Two Strings work, you need to see this film for its beautiful imagery, for its inventive action sequences, for its strangeness and its honesty of emotion. Kubo and the Two Strings, warts and all, is pure, flippin' fantastic. And just a reminder that the scary stuff lives on the Monster Channel, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can watch online and on your iOS device by going to monsterchannel.tv or on your Roku device by getting the Monster Channel app. And other devices are forthcoming. Stay tuned, so to speak. I'm Dan Persons. Now is the time to take a stand against hatred, fear, and greed. Register to vote, and let's defeat Trump.
All right. It's funny. I didn't realize that this movie was produced by the studio that produced Paranorman and Coraline.
Yeah, I wasn't either until I recorded the Weekly Podioplex and started looking at the information for comparisons. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes some sense now. They're really big on stop motion.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that when the movie initially was coming out, my 10-year-old Michael was, I want to go see it. And then what got me was, and I guess, again, this is the nature of the internet and such, was that among his peers on the internet, they were kind of like poo-pooing the movie and like, no, this isn't any good. And suddenly he changed his mind. now that I hear that it's done by the folks who did Coraline and Paranorman, 2 movies he loved, I got to bring this to his attention and say, dude, never mind what your friends are saying. Let's give it a try.
Yeah, and it's one that kind of snuck up on me too. I didn't even hear about it until about a month ago, and it was another friend of mine who came up and said, "This movie's coming up, and no one's talking about it." Mm-hmm. And I think it might be kind of the reason why some of the target audience is eschewing it, because it's the animated stuff like Secret Life of Pets or the Minions and Despicable Me stuff, or even the Disney stuff is really marketed well in advance. I mean, they put out trailers and clips and a huge amount of marketing material. This had pretty much no budget for marketing that I can see, but it's one that I saw the trailer and I'm like, I need to see this movie. I still haven't got out into the theater to see it yet, but it's one that it grabbed me and said, you really need to pay attention to this because it looks way different than anything else that has been up in front of your eyes before.
See, that makes no sense though. Why limit the marketing when the other 2 movies, they went gangbusters with, well, I don't remember Coraline being so heavily touted. It was more word of mouth and, of course, hey, Neil Gaiman. But Paranorman, God, I think there were even like Wendy's toys to go along with it, that it had huge promotion. So I don't get why they were holding back this time.
I don't know. I really don't. I mean, I wonder if there was something like Paranorman may have been pulling on the zombie, ghost, undead zeitgeist that kind of permeates things a bit, right, in the last few years, and may have been trying to play on that, like, hey, you like these other things, try this out. Where there's no real analog I can think of with Kubo and the Two Strings. I mean, it just looks like on the surface, a fantasy adventure film with some spirit guides. And when you start looking at the deeper into the trailer and that kind of stuff, you see that it's really going to be a fantasy adventure. And there's nothing that really comes to my mind as an analog that would grab people and drag them in. It's original, and that's been the bane of existence for Hollywood. Like recently, the franchises perform a lot better, sure, than the original stuff does.
Well, I mean, if you're going to ask people to spend upwards just on the tickets of 10 and on, you've got to have something that's, tried and true, I guess, tested. Going with something original, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah, it's a gamble. And a lot of studios now aren't willing to play that game with the gamble because, I mean, I take it back. They are, but only if they have something to absorb the hit. Like Pacific Rim, for example, was a gamble. Mm-hmm. It didn't perform that well here in the States, but the studio was able to absorb that with other big movies. I mean, people will tell me, why do we have reboots and remakes and the umpteenth Transformers sequel? I'm like, because that's what the money is. That's what's giving you things like Pacific Rim and Moon and some of these other things that are original and experimental and people won't show up to the theater for, but we love them in the cold audience.
That's funny. I guess Hollywood is learning from the actors who are doing the same thing, taking on these roles that you're like, why? Well, because it's a big paycheck, and then it allows them to do the more artistic, more meaningful movie.
Yeah, I mean, like the Paranormal Activity, the found footage stuff, that was so big for a long time because it was cheap to make and people loved it. And so it was a huge payday, and they could use that money elsewhere to play with an experimental film and see what the next found footage or Paranormal Activity film was going to be. Right. The next genre was going to be.
Oh, by the way, have you... were you even aware of it, the Monster Channel?
No, I was not, actually. It sounds like something I might need to take a look at and recommend to a few friends of mine who absolutely love the monsters and the horror stuff.
Oh, it's a great little channel. If you've got a Roku, you can get... It has its own, like... app or whatever. I don't know what the terminology is. I'm sounding like lame here, but I have a Roku and I've set it up on my menu and such, and the stream is good. The picture quality of all the movies they show is excellent, it's just a fun channel. So I would highly recommend it. I'll put the link, as Dan said in his review. It's monsterchannel.tv, but I'll put the link in the show notes as well if people, want to take a look at that. So, yeah, definitely. Let's take one more break, and when we come back, we will start talking about fall television. Can you believe it? The fall's already here.
Where has this year gone?
I know.
Emergency. Batman speaking. Warning all of you to brace yourselves for big news.
The biggest.
Tell them, Robin.
Holy superlatives, Batman. It's really exciting.
Greetings, citizens. Join me, your old bat chum, John S. Drew, on my journey to discover what it is I love about the classic 1966 Batman television series on the Batcave Podcast. Each episode, I'm joined by a guest host as we review the classic television series. There's a new episode every 2 weeks. Same bat time, same bat channel on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or at thebatcavepodcast.com.
Holy memoranda, folks. Make a note not to miss it.
Good thinking, Robin.
Hello, I'm Albie.
And I'm Heather.
And we do the Quantum Leap Podcast. It can be found at quantumleappodcast.com and also on iTunes.
We are starting at the beginning of Quantum Leap and going through all the episodes. This is my first time watching, and Albie has seen them during their original run.
In each podcast, we talk about the overall thoughts of each episode. We do an episode recap if you haven't seen them in a while, just to refresh your memory. And then we do a detailed plot discussion.
And we also have some great interviews.
Scott Bakula, I remember being very, very generous of spirit and very, very kind to his fellow actors. It was my first kiss ever. So I am getting to kiss Scott Bakula on screen.
And everybody involved with it was just terrific. And I'm always amazed that people come up to me and remember that episode and can quote things from it that I can't even quote.
So if you're a leaper, it'd be great if you came and joined us. And if you've never heard of Quantum Leap, it's maybe a good time to start watching it because you have a podcast to go along with it.
So please give our podcast a listen, and hopefully you like us and stick around.
Go to quantumleappodcast.com to listen to new episodes.
I bought a bourgeois house in the Hollywood Hills with a trunk load of $100,000 bills. Man came by to hook up my cable TV. We settled in for the night, my baby and me. We switched round and round till dawn. There was 57 channels and nothing on. 57 channels and nothing on. 57 channels and nothing on.
And here we go with the second hour of the Chronic Rift. Our look at the fall TV schedule, not the whole schedule. Michael and I are going to bring you some things that stood out to us. I want to preamble all this by pointing out that I'm not much of a modern TV watcher. I've gotten better in recent years, especially with like the CW and their superhero lineup. But when I was a kid, I was one of those ones that probably some psychiatrists and therapists and such would say, you watch way too much TV and it's not good for you and such. I mean, I even as a teenager used to have fantasies of renting out a tuxedo and sitting down to watch the Emmys with my tuxedo on. You know, that's how like into TV I was. And I mean, I watch a lot of TV, but I tend to watch stuff streaming, my DVDs and such these days. I don't watch a lot of new television. Or if I do, as I pointed out last week, it takes me forever to get around to it because I'm being a bit of a snob like I was with Seinfeld and The Office, which, as I've mentioned, now I am utterly in love with The Office. So I give you all that as a bit of a warning as we talk about these shows. Now, what I'm going to do is we'll bounce back and forth. Michael, I'll let you get things started here by giving me your first pick. Then I'll do one, then you do one, and we'll go back and forth. So what's standing out for you this fall season?
Well, kind of like you, I'm not the typical TV viewer. It really takes a lot to grab me on a new series. You have to have a really good catch on it, or something that kind of grabs my heart and says, "Watch this." I'm the kind of guy who will pick up something like The Blacklist that's been highly recommended, but I'll watch it on Netflix. A few seasons back, just because I don't want to get. I've had too many times where I get invested in the show and then it fizzles out, and I feel kind of almost cheated by the storyline. And that's kind of why I'm drawn to MacGyver this time around. They're doing a reboot of the classic 1985 to 1992 series that I fell in love with and really kind of helped drive me toward the science and engineering study. They're kind of doing a younger version, it seems, but they're bringing it back. MacGyver was a story of a guy who worked for a clandestine organization within the government. He had this extraordinary talent for problem solving. He knew a lot of science, a lot of engineering, and he was able to work his way out of traps, using a paperclip and chewing gum. And then he was able to stop whatever terrorist threat or whatever threat to the government it was in the process. He was unique to me as a kid because he didn't like guns. He didn't like the violence aspect of solving problems. He wasn't a typical shoot 'em up hero. He was, let me use my brain, let me use my ingenuity, let me work this out. So they're bringing that back. I know I've seen a lot of stuff online. How can they do this? How can they not have Richard Dean Anderson in the role? No one can replace Richard Dean Anderson as MacGyver, and I'm willing to give it a shot. This could be great. It could be something that really sticks out to me, or it could be the next Knight Rider, which I enjoyed for the cheesiness factor, but I see why they killed it. It has the possibility, I think, of drawing a lot of people from this generation into science and technology and engineering and mathematics fields, like it did with me, and really helping them out. Especially since they're bringing a younger guy as Lucas Till, who played Havoc in the recent X-Men movies, and bringing him in as the new MacGyver. It has me a little bit worried because the promotional material right now has focused more on the action aspect of it. He seems more like a secret agent, kind of James Bond, Jason Bourne type than he does, the MacGyver we're used to. But I think it's also because they can't sell as well this idea of a guy getting out of things with chewing gum and paper clips,
right?
As they can. Here's an action film, or here's an action premise, and then bring that stuff into it and kind of win people that way. The other thing that has me concerned about it is the fact that they had a pilot that was shot with Lucas Till's MacGyver. They're bringing in former CSI star George Eads as Jack Dalton, but they had changed his name to like Lincoln or something like that. They had a whole team to go with him. That normally the whole premise of MacGyver used to be that it was just MacGyver going out on his missions. He would sometimes have help from his overseer, handler. What was his name? Last name was Thornton. That was his go-between with this agency, and then he'd bring in a couple of friends here and there as need be. And they took that pilot they shot in early 2016, and in June of 2016 they scrapped it completely.
Ooh.
And they brought in a new pilot with the same director, kind of rewrote it a little bit, and only included MacGyver and Jack Dalton. So when you see that kind of thing happen in Hollywood, in productions, you start to wonder, either it's a really good course correction, knowing that they've got to get on the right path, or it's a, oh crap, we screwed up and now you're gonna suffer in quality. I'm hoping it's the former and not the latter.
It sounds like it might be the former, because I could just see it now. It's like, we've got this property, MacGyver, let's bring it back. I could almost see like the network getting too involved and saying, well, the ensemble casts work better because it gives you more story potential. It does this, that, the other thing. And, because when I saw, what'd you say his name was? Lucas Dalton? Lucas Till. When I saw him, I said, yeah, I could see him being MacGyver. I never watched the show like regularly. I saw odd episodes here and there. I wasn't a huge MacGyver fan. But to me, one of the things when you reboot these shows, whether it's as another TV series or as the movie is, you've got to give them not only just the feel, but there's got to be a visual. And this guy, he's got the hair like Richard Dean Anderson had the mullet and such. I could see there was some thought put into it. So who knows? Maybe this was just like suddenly they realized, yeah, you know what? Ensemble isn't going to do it. It's called MacGyver. It's not called Hawaii Five-0, or something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna watch it. Like I said, I never was a big MacGyver fan, but I'm gonna give this one a try just cause I am curious. Like you said, it could be Knight Rider, it could be Bionic Woman for all we know. God, that was a disaster. But
and I mean they are kind of doing the young thing, and they are kind of prettying it up. You would expect this to be on the CW or something like that. It's actually on CBS. Which I think they're pulling a little bit of that Supergirl magic, where that started on CBS and then it went to CW, but they tried to apply the same formula back over to the mainstream network to try to draw people in. I think they're trying to draw our generations in, who are familiar with the property from the 80s, by putting it on mainstream instead of on a lower, I don't want to say lower end, lower tier, but CW can draw lower numbers and still succeed more than CBS can do. If you don't get 2 or 3 or 4 million people on CBS, you're hurting. So that might be, they might be really playing that formula up of mainstream. Let's bring the people in who know MacGyver, and then make him younger, make him sexier, and bring in the younger kids as well.
See, that's interesting too, because I'm just thinking about some of the other remakes that went to CW, like Beauty and the Beast. For that matter, even the Tomorrow People, although that didn't really have the kind of built-in audience that, Beauty and the Beast had, because it was an overseas show. But, I don't know. I'm going to definitely watch it. I think it's just funny, though. It goes back to what you said. It's almost the same thing, that we feel this need to go with what we're familiar with rather than trying something new. It's like we've already got the proven format with MacGyver. It worked back in the 80s. We'll update it for today, and we'll get boffo numbers like we're doing with Hawaii Five-0, like we're doing with, for the CW, The Flash, and yet, at the same time, they don't have enough confidence in what was, that they felt the need to bring in an ensemble cast. Or like in the case of Bionic Woman, where all they did really was just take the name Jamie Summers, make her bionic, and then they went completely off the rails and did something that no fan of the 70s series would recognize. I mean, even Knight Rider at least had some familiar elements, but it kind of even went beyond the cheese of the 80s show, I think. I liked it. I mean, I watched every episode.
Oh, I loved it too. I could see where, since it wasn't the same idea of Knight Rider with, the guy in the car going out and solving problems.
Right.
It was a secret agent, government agency kind of thing, and then they tried so hard to reboot it, halfway through when they realized they were losing audience.
It was too late.
It was too late.
Yeah. It's a shame. All right, let me talk about my first one here that actually, when I went through the list of what was being done, because I had a few ideas based on things I'd seen. I haven't seen any promos. I had to go look this up on YouTube. Oh, God, now what was the name of it? Let me find it here. I lost it. And you'd think I would Still Star-Crossed. Being the English teacher and having taught Romeo and Juliet for going on 12, 13 years now, this really fascinates me. This could be really good, or it could be a train wreck as well. I guess that could be anything, depending on how you look at it. But the whole idea of continuing the story of the Capulets and Montagues after Romeo and Juliet have passed, I find that intriguing, because I have said there are a number of Shakespeare plays that kind of have some elements not resolved. My biggest one is Macbeth. I would love to see some sort of a sequel to Macbeth, because the witches in Macbeth make a prophecy that Banquo's sons will eventually become king. Now, at the end of Macbeth is dead, Malcolm takes over, he takes the throne, and there's a BBC production that I love because they actually pick up on that, because as Malcolm is making his final speech and they're bringing the crown to him, in walks Banquo's son, and he stares at Malcolm, and Malcolm stares back at him, and they fade to red, not black. And it's just to me, it's like, there's your sequel. We've got all the elements in play. Let's do Macbeth 2. And now you've got this, what's going to be a weekly show done by the producers of Grey's Anatomy and The Practice, or whatever it's called. All those Shonda Rhimes shows. So I'm guessing she's involved as well. And I saw the promo, and because I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? Because at the end, they did promise to behave, and they were going to erect a statue and all this stuff. And I see it, and it's like, okay, they're taking Rosaline, and they're taking Banquo. And what they're going to do is, in order to make sure the peace stays in place, they're forcing the two of them to marry, and they don't want to be married to each other. And it turns out that Rosaline was having an affair with Prince Aeschylus, the Prince of Verona. So that explains why she never got into Romeo in the first place. And I also like the fact, because they showed scenes, and I'm wondering if this is going to be the first episode, is Romeo and Juliet do appear. They play out at least the end scene with the two of them in the tomb, killing themselves. So I don't know. As the English teacher, like I said, I'm excited for it. It's kind of ironic that this show's coming out now, though, because we took Romeo and Juliet off the syllabus because we got a little tired of teaching it after all these years. But had you seen this at all?
I had not. As you were talking about it, I brought up some information to take a look at it, and there are two things that are standing out to me. Number one is, like you said, Shonda Rhimes. Most everything she touches sticks around for a while. It develops a huge following. I mean, we're talking like Grey's Anatomy and Scandal and Private Practice and all those.
Right.
She is amazing for ABC right now, and I can see why they went with it. She says, "Let's do this." Like, okay, you got it. The other thing that's sticking out to me is Anthony Stewart Head is Lord Capulet. Oh my!
I missed that.
Oh my!
I totally missed that. Because they don't really show in the preview the Capulets and the Montagues for long, except for I think it's Lady Capulet who makes the proclamation of the curse. That's like the only quick scene they show. They really focus in the promo on Rosaline, Aeschylus, and Benvolio, and their romantic triangle. So this is going to be interesting then, because Anthony Stewart Head, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
it's a fresh spin on the Romeo and Juliet. I mean, a lot of people will say, "Hey, it's a good, the Romeo and Juliet thing is the ultimate romance." I'm like, no. Have you actually read the play? No.
Yeah.
But I mean, they keep doing it over and over again. It's one of those evergreen properties that keeps popping up, and they always try to find a different way to do it. And I'm kind of interested now because the story itself is a little tired, but doing it as here's the fallout from this, here's what happened later, that intrigues me.
Right, exactly. Now I wonder if they're gonna, because again, like I said, they do this whole thing at the end where they shake hands. Well, I'm saying they shake hands. They agree that there's been enough death, and then there's the whole statue of Juliet like raised and such in their honor. So I'm curious if those elements are going to be in there as well. But this should be fun, and I'm just disappointed now because I can't get the kids hooked into Romeo and Juliet by saying, "Hey, watch Still Star-Crossed while you're at it." Oh well. There's still my Macbeth idea, though. We could do that. The whole intrigue of who knows? Maybe she gets this one. This could be the start of a new series of shows from her dealing with Shakespeare's works.
It could be. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff to mine outside of the actual stories themselves. There are a lot of follow-ups they could do, or a lot of side stories they could do.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, they could even reinvent some of them, like they did with Merlin. I mean, that's kind of what drew me on that one. Speaking of Anthony Stewart Head, it was the unique twist of they're younger and magic is outlawed, so Merlin's got to watch himself. Can't just be the super powerful wizard that we expect him to be. And so that's why I'm kind of on board with this rebooted idea or redone idea of Romeo and Juliet. It's not the typical Romeo and Juliet. It's something tangential and twisted and interesting.
Have you completed watching Merlin?
Yes.
You have? Okay. Yeah, really great ending to that series, I thought.
That ending was both it made me smile and also kind of twisted the knife a little bit.
I still remember when Merlin premiered here in the States on NBC. It was like shocking that we were getting a BBC drama on primetime, and it'd been the first time for a while that a network had picked up a show like that. And I was kind of disappointed when they didn't start running the second season. That I think it was BBC America then picked that up from there. But oh well. All right, what's your second choice?
My second choice kind of almost falls outside the realm of fall TV, but I don't know if we're going to get a chance to talk about it again before then, because it's almost like a mid-series and replacement, but not really. And that is Star Trek Discovery. Is coming out in January, and it's got a unique distribution method going on with it. If you live outside the United States, you can catch it on pretty much any normal channel or even on Netflix. Here in the States, the pilot episode will be on CBS, and then the rest of the series will be on their exclusive streaming site or channel, CBS All Access.
Right.
It basically is a new Star Trek series, and it's not set in the Kelvin universe from the films. This is actually going back to the original universe where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy and everyone else had been for all those years. It's due to premiere just after the 50th anniversary, so it'll be in January instead of September. And it's going to be set 10 years before the events of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. So we're talking actually like the Christopher Pike era of Star Trek.
Right.
And I was a little leery at first because, hey, we're doing a Star Trek series. Great. That's I love seeing a new Star Trek series, but make sure it's not in the same formula that kind of killed the franchise with Voyager and Enterprise and some of the movies later on. What really sold me was the fact they brought on Brian Fuller to run it. He got his start on Deep Space Nine and Voyager, but he has done phenomenal work in his career since then. And then right after they announced Brian Fuller and they said, okay, here's what we're doing, they brought on Nicholas Meyer, who was the writer and director of Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 6.
Right.
And it's even got, massive support from the Roddenberry family. Rod Roddenberry has come on as the executive producer, and he's touting this like, yes, let's do this. It's going to be 13 episodes. Brian Fuller says it's going to be told kind of like as a novel. It's going to be a sequential story arc rather than episodic. He said that with over 700 episodes and some movies in there, that they really have to do things differently than they have in the last 50 years. Otherwise, they're not going to go anywhere. It's going to be interesting because the main character, the protagonist, is not the captain of the starship.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a woman. I think they said maybe even a woman of color who is on the lower deck somewhere, doing her job, and she's the one that really starts to get this thing rolling. And the captain is going to be a supporting character. They haven't done a lot else about it because they haven't really announced any casting or anything else, or even a premise. I mean, this is really interesting. The ship design kind of maybe hints at a few things. It's an unused Ralph McQuarrie design of the Enterprise refit. They were going to do a film back in the 70s called Planet of the Titans, before they decided to go with the phase 2, which then led to motion picture, and they went back to the original design of the Enterprise. But this thing kind of looks like a mix between Federation and Klingon starships. And the reveal that they had, the first look at the ship, and people who have been saying that the ship looks terrible, they're still working on the render. They just wanted to get that out there for Comic-Con and say, take a look at this. This should help you to see, kind of what we're working on. Even the music felt Klingon in a sense, and this will be right in the middle of all the heavy stuff they were doing in the original series with Klingons and the Federation kind of at each other's throats. So I'm wondering how they're going to work this and how it's going to play out. I'm more intrigued about the possibilities of, again, boldly going where we haven't gone before, instead of rehashing the Enterprise starship and the captain's the leader, and we're just going to go do the thing. This looks like it could be fun.
Yeah, and I didn't know about the 13 episodes. That's good, because if they were doing the full run of 22, I could see, and this is one of the other things with doing these lengthy type shows, especially reboots, is when things aren't working out, you go into panic mode. And panic mode would be, hey, look, Discovery is running alongside Enterprise, and there's Pike, and now we got to cast a young Spock. You've got Supergirl, and one of the things they had said early on was that Superman wouldn't make an appearance for some time. And now suddenly it's like, first 2 episodes, we're getting Superman. Why? Because it's panic mode. We're moving to another network. We want to make absolutely certain that our viewership will follow us to this new network. How do you do that? Let's bring in Superman. I on the one hand, I'm excited by it, but on the other hand, I'm still kind of like, too soon. This is Supergirl. Superman should not be involved in this. I like the little subtle things they did with the texting and the messaging from Clark. That was cool. The odd flash across the sky. There goes Superman. That was cool. This is panic mode. Or damage control. Let's put it that way. I won't say panic mode. It's damage control. We have to shift, so we need to make sure everything is all right there. But once you uncork that genie of Superman, now you're going to lean on it every time you feel like the series needs it. And on the one hand, doing this 10 years before, it's dealing with the Organians, it's dealing with Klingons, and that's going to bring up another thing. Are the Klingons going to be original series Klingons, or are they going to be movies and beyond Klingons?
I would hope that they're going to do something within the continuity, since they're plunking it right in this 50 years that the Trek has been around. I'm hoping they do the original, Kor and Koloth and Kang type,
Right.
darker skinned, flat-headed, wearing crazy costumes that are made from bubble wrap and I really hope they do that kind of thing and not try to drag in this weird ridged head thing,
Right.
that didn't belong in the original series, and then they tried to explain away in Enterprise and later things of, well, it was this weird virus that no.
Yeah.
you could have just left it at the Deep Space Nine trials and tribulations discussion from Worf of, we don't talk about it and move on.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the best way to handle it. It's just like, never mind. Just let's move on. This is better. Yeah.
Not at the fact that the makeup has changed in the preceding years, and we don't talk about it inside the story.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really excited about it, just because, there's so much more they can do when they're not constrained by the censors and stuff from the networks.
Mm-hmm.
CBS All Access is going to be strictly, internet based, kind of like Netflix, so they can do stuff that really wouldn't fly on network television. I mean, one of the things I've seen on there is that they want to be able to get a more genuine reaction from their characters. Like they see something blow up and it's going to be more explosion, but more the effects are going to be better, and you get more of a movie type reaction from the characters instead of just oh, okay, well, let's go over here now. They can't take time for the reactions. I'm interested. I'm fascinated by that idea of trying to draw movie style Trek into a network television series.
All right. Now, what do you think, though, about this whole model of delivering the show, going with the first episode to whet the appetite, and then it's like, well, kids, if you want more, you got to come over to CBS Access and pay us for it?
It is a downside if you're going over for just one show, and that's, I'm not sure how All Access is really gonna play it as, the episode by episode by episode, week by week. So the free month kind of thing won't work out in that regard.
Right.
But the other thing that really, really drags me in for All Access is the fact that it is All Access, as far as I know, where you pay them the fee to get in, the $10 a month, and you're not just getting, Star Trek Discovery. You're getting all of Star Trek that they have on the service. You're getting all of Supergirl, for instance, it's on the service. All of Big Bang Theory. I mean, there's 10 years of that, which is still a huge popular show for a lot of people. You're getting, for that money, you're getting access to everything on CBS. So if there's something you like on CBS, it's kind of more of a benefit to you to do that. If you're just going for Discovery, I can see how that would be a problem. And that's kind of what I'm looking at right now is, do I spend that money on just that one show? Or, I haven't seen the back catalog of Big Bang Theory. I saw a few episodes back in the first or second or third season and was really big on it then, but that was years ago.
Right.
And it gives me a chance to catch up on something like that. And that might be what draws me in.
See, you say that, and I'm like thinking, okay, first off, Big Bang, plenty of markets that are running it in syndication, including TBS. So, I mean, if you wanted to do that, and then you say, okay, I've got access to all the Star Trek. Well, you do on Amazon, Netflix, and Hulu at the moment, which then makes me get a little worried that, if I were them, I'd pull it all out. I'd be like, this is where you get your Star Trek now, if you want it, kids, is CBS. And then maybe to me, it's like, okay, now it's worth the $10 a month because I can't get it anywhere else. It's like my only reason to do it would be to go watch Discovery. Honestly, everything else, there are outlets for all their other content. Even Supergirl, I'm imagining, especially now that it's CW, will eventually wind up on Netflix the way Flash and Arrow, and I would assume Legends of Tomorrow will eventually wind up.
Yeah, and that's the big gamble they're taking with this All Access thing. And it's telling that it's limited to the United States in that regard. I mean, Discovery will be on, I think it's the Space Channel up in Canada. It's going to be delivered directly to Netflix and a lot of other markets. But United States, I think, is the only one doing this, where it's, premiere on CBS, and then everything else is limited to this network. So you have to buy the experience. And I get the frustration from fans because Star Trek has always been, network type television where it's been over the air and you can catch it every week without any problem. And I see this as a big gamble on CBS's part to see if this will work as a model. And I don't know if I should be hopeful or not for it. I'm glad they're being innovative and that they're trying new marketing techniques instead of just relying on the tried and true. But at the same time, Trek kind of needs an audience to survive, and I hope that it follows.
Yeah. That's one thing too. It's like the world needs to stop this whole thing of borders when it comes to our entertainment. Like you say, they're going to be able to watch it on Space as a weekly show. It's going to go on Netflix in other countries, just not here in the United States. This whole thing of being landlocked into a certain thing. So it's like, this is how we're going to get the United States to watch the show. But it's like, why not just make CBS all access for the world? This whole mentality of, this is this region's show and this is how we're going to distribute it, to me seems even more limiting and also makes it more complicated for those that are distributing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's a lot of programs that, like Trek or, some of the CW stuff like Supergirl and Arrow and Flash. That stuff, it transcends borders. We're coming up on conventions where we all want to talk about this stuff, and some people still haven't seen it. It's crazy that we are still locked by borders like that. We're still landlocked in our ability to, here's our stuff. And like BBC says, well, if you want to see our stuff online, you pay for a cable subscription or a satellite subscription, or you have to find a way to VPN around into the BBC because it's all limited to the UK over there. I really wish we had, and maybe this will help. I don't know, but I really wish we had a way to open everything up and say, if you want it, tune into this. If you want, Star Trek, tune into this, and it's going to be broadcast the same time for everyone worldwide at once.
Yeah, that was something with the BBC, because I seem to remember that they were getting ready for this whole Doctor Who in particular being exclusive to their BBC iPlayer, and I think they were hoping to make it something international, because I remember when the big deal was being made that Doctor Who was being dropped from Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon, and then at the last moment, they managed to save it on Amazon, where it's still available for free, as part of the Prime membership, but Netflix and Hulu didn't get it back. I wonder if the BBC, didn't plan ahead or bit off more than it could chew or whatever when it came to regional type stuff, that they couldn't promote an international BBC iPlayer.
Yeah, I wonder. And I wonder if that's going to be the same fate that befalls All Access and Star Trek Discovery, because that was a big thing for a lot of people who are watching here in the States. It's because Doctor Who has grown larger than just the UK or Europe overall. It's really big in the States right now, and then they took away that access point for it, with Netflix and Hulu and all that other stuff, and said, okay, well, it's on Prime. Okay, well, that's $90 a month.
Yeah.
And well, or you can subscribe to our special channel on the iPlayer. Okay, well, that's an additional bit. And from my perspective, I cut the cord on cable a long time ago, because I got tired of, as the stinger for coming into this segment was talking about, there were 57 channels, or in my case 100 channels, and nothing on. I tuned into 2 channels and recorded a few things on the DVR, and that was it. So cutting the cable, and then, okay, well, now I'll put out for Netflix, now I'll put out for Hulu, now I'll put out for these things, and kind of feel my way around to what I wanted to watch and build my own programming. That really was something that appealed to me. I'm paying, a smaller amount than hundreds of dollars a month for a whole bunch of stuff I don't watch. I'm paying a smaller amount for stuff I actually do pay attention to. So I'm also wondering if All Access is going to drive us that way too. You want to see CBS stuff? Okay, well, it's $10 a month. It's not $100 a month for a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't need.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's not something I've been trying to get my wife to wrap her head around, because we still have the cable, and yet we have Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, and she handles the cable bill, I handle the streaming stuff, but I'm like, sweetie, if we drop the cable and drop, for that matter, the house phone, because every one of us right now have a cell phone anyway, so I just don't see the point, especially considering most of the time the phone rings, we ignore it. I'm like, what are we paying for this for? We ignore the phone anyway, because most of the calls are from telemarketers. Anybody who really wants to talk to us will call us on our individual cells. So what's the problem?
Yeah, we did something very similar. We've got our cell phones, and then we signed up for Google Voice, and it's a free forwarding service. So we have a quote unquote local number that people can call. If they're in the Georgia area, so it doesn't, in the time that it used to cost for long distance, now it really doesn't anymore.
Right.
They can call that number as our local number, and it's our quote unquote home number, and it forwards to both of our cells, so they ring simultaneously, and we just look at it like, oh, okay, that's someone we actually want to talk to. Click, let's go. But I mean, a lot of the stuff that comes in now is telemarketing, and it's and stuff like that, robocalls and everything else. So
right.
Yeah.
And they're starting to get into the cell phones though too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right, let me talk about my last choice here for what I find interesting. I mean, there were some looking through it. You mentioned the Blacklist, and I saw that they're actually doing a spin-off Blacklist show, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. I just caught it briefly there. I was like surprised. I was like, wow, I didn't realize the Blacklist was that popular. But again, it goes back to what we're saying. Now you go with the familiar, CSI, Law and Order, why not the Blacklist? Why not? Maybe we can have a whole series of these shows and such. But my one actually goes back to something from my childhood. The show is called Timeless. It's on NBC, and from the sounds of it, it just sounds like an adult version of Voyagers. Really, it's three people in a time machine chasing after a criminal who's trying to alter the past, and along the way, they're meeting up with historical events and historical people. One of the things I'm doing the research for this show, which I've seen NBC doing a lot of promoting for, they tout this show a lot. They were doing it during the Olympics. They were doing it during America's Got Talent, which my family and I watch every week, is, that they're going to interact with historical figures. And one of the ones that really has me all excited is that they're going to meet up with a young Ian Fleming.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, before he even started, writing and such. So, this could, again, this really falls into, this could be spectacular, or it could, fall apart. This might be something after 6 or 8 episodes, I'll be sitting here crying about it here on the podcast that it's gone. But it's got the elements of time travel, interacting with the past. And I also like the fact that one of the characters is black, and he's dealing with the whole, okay, we're going into certain historical elements that I'm not going to fit in with very easily, which is a nice thing, because usually most of our time travelers are white. And Doctor Who kind of glossed over it with Martha, when she said, aren't I going to be carted away as a slave? He goes, nah, just act like you own the place, like you belong here, and no problem. And sure enough, that was how they got away with that, and they kind of skirted what could have been a really good dramatic element. This series seems to be taking that on, which I do appreciate. So we'll see. But I'm looking forward to it as the time travel geek who still misses, and now I'm blanking on the name of the show, with what's his name from Grey's Anatomy, the guy who, Journeyman, thank you.
I mourn for that show.
To this day, I mourn for that show.
It had so much potential, and they killed it.
Yeah. But see, I look at this show now, and I'm like thinking, could this be the next Journeyman? Could this be, something really good that just most people don't get. And as a result, after 6 to 8 to 13 episodes, we're sitting here crying about this one, like Journeyman, like, a number of the time travel type shows that just never seem to catch on. Yeah. Unlike say, what was it? Time Tracks that got a couple of seasons because it went the syndication route, but then the effects were cheap. I mean, from the looks of this, Timeless looks like they're spending some money.
Yeah, it looks like it. I mean, it's Eric Kripke who's running it, and he knows, like Revolution and Supernatural, he knows how to make things work and how to tell a good story. So. I'm hoping that plays out well. I'm really interested on this one about Matt Lanter. He's previously like 90210 and that kind of thing. So he's been on the CW side. He was also Anakin Skywalker in the animated Star Wars, the Clone Wars.
Oh.
So I mean, I kind of have a soft spot for him because I watched all 6 seasons of the Clone Wars and really enjoyed them. And seeing him sometimes on 90210 when it flashes across the screen, I'm like, no, okay, well, at least he's still working. But this seems like there's a lot of potential in him as an actor, and I'm really excited to see him getting work, especially on something as big as going on NBC with Eric Kripke.
Yeah. All right, now in terms of returning shows, what are you excited about?
The top of my list, we've already talked about Supergirl, which I'm really excited to see, jumping from CBS to the CW and how they work that with a lower budget. Some of the stars maybe not returning. We will see how they play that. There's not been a lot of discussion on that as far as I can tell, but the one I'm really excited about is The Flash.
Yeah.
The Flash and Supergirl are the 2 superhero shows right now that I watch and I enjoy. They are top of my list every week. And The Flash, where they've decided to go with the Flashpoint, I'm just like, okay, you guys are in it for real on this one. I mean, the first season was magical. The second one got a little bit more drama to it, but I really enjoyed the intrigue of the parallel Earths and how they played that all out. And now they're doing Flashpoint, at least for the first half of the season. Where basically Barry changes his own past and he rewrites it so that he's no longer the big superhero. He's written himself out of existence into a parallel universe where he doesn't matter. I really am intrigued on how they're going to take the main character and basically cast him aside and say he's not the hero of the show anymore, but he's still got to be the guy who figures it out and fixes the problem. That intrigues me so much, and I'm excited that they're taking that gamble, they're taking the risk.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, but I'm also surprisingly looking forward to Legends of Tomorrow. When that show started, I thought, it wasn't all that great. I think they just thought it would be cool to take a bunch of the secondary characters from the various shows and throw them together. And I actually stopped watching it around the 6th episode. I just let it all pile up on the DVR. And then over the summer, I said, well, I either got to watch it or give up on the show. And after the 6th episode, it started picking up. It really got a little interesting there with some of the side plots and stuff that were going on. And I, again, kind of like Stranger Things, started watching 2-3 episodes at a time because it wasn't just a matter of, oh, that was nice, and I walked away. Then the very ending, they get to the point to where they've got Vandal Savage, which is the whole point of the series and such. And I thought, okay, now we got to the end. And then it's like, well, no, we've still got 2 or 3 more episodes, and we're dealing with the I want to say the Time Lords, but they're not the Time Lords. I can't even remember. God, Time Masters. There you go. So now we got to deal with that plot too, and that to me was a little bit of a hiccup. To me, that should have been just left until next season with them. But whatever. I'm really curious to see where they're going to pick this up now, because I did get once I got into the series proper over this summer, I did get invested in the characters and such, and I'm curious to see where it's all going to come out. So I'm excited by that. I'm not as excited by Arrow. I'm getting tired of them kind of rebooting the show every season by introducing more and more new characters. It's like you get interested in these guys, and it's like, well, no. And I know that's life sometimes, but it's getting a little tiresome. And also the flashbacks are getting tiresome, even though they've said this is the last season we'll see flashbacks because Oliver was gone for 5 years. So this is the 5th year of flashbacks, and then we'll be done. It's really tiresome. I don't care.
Yeah, and I almost dropped it in the 4th season. I mean, there are points where, we'd look at our list of things and we're like, okay, here's what we've got, and Arrow kept slipping down the list. Just because the 4th season really took a turn, and it didn't feel like the other seasons did. It really felt so odd.
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited because they've kind of wiped that away. They've got a fresh slate, and they say, okay, we're getting back to our roots. But yeah, they've got a lot of trust to gain back because the 4th season was just so rough.
Yeah, there you go. I like that they've got trust to gain back. Yeah. So it's interesting too, because I'm just thinking about how funny it is that the CW, which is basically another CBS channel, is basically now a superhero network, because every night you've got a superhero show. You've got a Warner Brothers, it's DC Comics. And I think back to 30, 40 years ago when CBS was doing The Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, and Wonder Woman. And at that time, Freddie Silverman, who was running the network, at a party, someone walked up to him and said, how does it feel to be the superhero network? And he immediately went on the phone that night and was like, we got to kill these shows. I don't want to be known as the superhero network. Even though those were their biggest rated shows. I mean, as much as people malign the Nicholas Hammond Spider-Man, it was a popular show at the time.
Yeah.
It was doing good numbers in the ratings. It just was, and this is, again, one of these things where it's like one person had the power, despite the numbers, despite the money it was making, had the power to turn around and say, yeah, I don't want to deal with this anymore, and cancel the show, like Gilligan's Island, like they did with that, even though that was making more money for them than Gunsmoke was back in the 60s. Paley said, I want my Gunsmoke because that's the show I enjoy. It's like, wow, you wouldn't think in those terms these days. Or TV shows getting done based on a handshake. Lee Majors walks into ABC with a guitar, and he and somebody else sing The Unknown Stuntman. Boom, we got the Fall Guy. Love it. Let's do it. Nothing. Not a script. Nothing. You would not see that today.
No, you wouldn't.
It's all demographics, and it's all, just... It's a shame, actually, I think, in some ways. But then again, that's where you'll see Netflix, taking... Because I could never see Stranger Things on even some of the cable channels. So there you got it, folks. The fall season. Any last words on it, Mike?
No, we are in a golden age right now of, superhero and kind of genre stuff. And I'm really excited for it. I mean, there's been a few hiccups here and there, but I'm actually really excited for what's coming up and the future of it and where we're going to go from here. I mean, it's looking good with, as much as it's maligned to have a superhero channel. The CW really kind of corners the market right now in DC entertainment. And I'm really happy about that.
Well, they're promoting it as like the superhero. They don't seem to be ashamed of it at all. They're cool with it. So as long as they're good with it, God bless. Yeah. All right. Before we go, Michael, what's going on with you? You've got Dragon Con coming up this weekend and such.
Yeah, I'm going to be downtown Atlanta Labor Day weekend starting Thursday this year. Dragon Con's coming up. We're going to have about 80,000 fans. Right now, it's the preliminary numbers descending on downtown Atlanta. for a pop culture convention. I'm on 11 appearances throughout the week. So my information about that is on my blog. It's at creativecriticality.wordpress.com. Just look for the post on there about DragonCon 2016. We're starting out on Thursday with some newbies events. So if you're brand new to the convention, come on by and we'll show you the ropes, give you a tour, that kind of stuff. You can also find us on the weekly Podioplex. Denise has been doing fantastic with the news. We are actually going to do a doubleheader this week because I cannot record after DragonCon.
Yeah,
I'm going to be dead tired. So you'll see 2 weeks of information out this week on weekly Podioplex, as well as the news from Denise. And then still continuing the Timestamps project on my blog, where I'm watching Doctor Who from the very beginning and going through those episodes. I think the Brain of Morbius is this week. So that was kind of an interesting tale. And again, that's creativecriticality.wordpress.com.
Brain of Morbius. I love that one. God. As for myself here, I'll always say chronicriff.com. Head on over to the website. See, not only now that we've got the Chronic Riff going, we've got other shows in the network as well. Or head on over to the Facebook page where we're posting news items, things that we don't get a chance to talk about here on the podcast. Or see us on Twitter at chronic_riff. Something I'm always forget. It's Keith who reminds me that it's chronic_rift. I'm always just doing at chronic rift, which isn't at all. I don't even know who has that, but. And I'll also point out for the Twitter followers, thank you very much, those of you that join us. There are some of you, though, that join us still thinking we're a podcast, I guess. I don't know, because you hear the word chronic. Every once in a while, I get like Weed Forever or something like that following, and it's like, no, that's not us. Either that or lately, and I've been seeing it on all the Twitter feeds, I'm getting a lot of, and I'm guessing they're bots of, for porn sites. It's, a hot girl saying, come check me out. I mean, she doesn't message or anything, but when you see it's like, Sheila B is now following you. I'm like, okay, cool. I go look and check, and it's just a couple of nude pictures and links to, whatever porn site she's on.
Yeah. And I think it's permeating Instagram a lot too. I keep getting those followers. They're like, come check out my website. I'm like, no, I know your website is full of malicious. Yeah. As soon as I go over there, I'm going to find a virus on my computer. No.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. It's funny. It's like, as wonderful as the internet is, we're still dealing with people trying to take advantage. There's still scammers. It's just more malicious, I guess, these days.
Yeah. I mean, it just takes one person. That's why they keep all your spam and stuff, or like Viagra and everything keeps popping up. Oh God, I'm sorry about that joke. I really am. No, it's why it keeps appearing in your inboxes, because it just takes one person to click the link and to actually use their service or get infected somehow, and it's worth it to them. They make all that money on one click, so it just keeps.
Do you remember that's the thing. It's like the days of actually just getting emails for Viagra are gone.
Yeah.
It's not as simple.
What I wouldn't give for a good old-fashioned email from a Nigerian prince who wants
Yeah. With the really bad English. Did I tell you about the one that I got the other day from someone who said that he was a lawyer and he was representing a Drew in South Africa, and he hadn't been able to find any relatives, but since I had the last name, he could just give me the money from the guy's inheritance. And all I had to do was send him my information. Yeah, I'd be about $48 million richer.
Yeah, what's stopping you?
I know. All right, so folks, remember, head on over to chronicriff.com. Yeah, I still didn't get the email done yet. I was on vacation this week, so that's like my priority this week is to take care of that. So until next time, folks, thank you so much for listening. Michael, once again, thank you.
Oh, thank you, John. It's a pleasure.
And Chrissy, Keith, we miss you. Hopefully we'll see you soon.